ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष वादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 28. Puranjan becomes a woman in the next life. So the interesting story which is going on. So we are at text 7. विशीर्णां स्वपुरीं वीक्ष्य प्रतिकूलाम् अनाद्वतान् पुत्रान् पौत्रानुगाम् अमात्यान् जायां च गतसौरदाम्. Translation.
King Puranjana then saw that everything in his own town was scattered and that his sons, grandsons, servants, and ministers were all gradually opposing him. He also noted that his wife was becoming cold and indifferent. Purport: when one becomes invalid, his senses and organs are weakened. In other words, they are no longer under one's control. The senses and sense objects then begin to oppose him. When a person is in a distressed condition, even his family members, his sons, grandsons, and wife become disrespectful. They no longer are under the command of the master of the house. Just as we wish to use our senses for sense gratification, the senses also require strength from the body in reciprocation. A man keeps a family for enjoyment, and similarly, family members demand enjoyment from the head of the family. When they do not receive sufficient money from him, they grow disinterested and ignore his commands or desires. This is all due to one's being a kripana, that is miser. This word kripana, used in the sixth verse, is in opposition to the word brahmana. In the human form of life, one should become a brahmana, which means that one should understand the constitutional position of the absolute truth Brahman and then engage in his service as a Vaishnava. We get this facility in human form of life, but if we do not properly utilize this opportunity, we become a krupana, that is miser. A miser is one who gets money but does not spend it properly. This human form of life is especially meant for understanding Brahman, for becoming a Brahmana, and if we do not utilize it properly, we remain a krupana. We can actually see that when one has money but does not spend it, he remains a miser and is never happy. Similarly, when one's intelligence is spoiled due to sense gratification, he remains a miser throughout his life. Hare Krishna.
So now this is the progress of life of Puranjan. Puranjan, he saw that everything in his town was scattered and his sons, grandsons and servants and ministers were gradually opposing him. And also his intelligence, in this case his wife, was becoming cold and indifferent. Again, we have to just remind that Puranjan is the living entity, that every man and woman, and the woman explained here is the intelligence of that living entity, right? So the intelligence is becoming cold. That is what the allegorical story this talks about. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains when one becomes invalid, his senses and organs are weakened. And therefore, he is not able to control himself or the others. And in such a situation, even the near and dear ones, they become disrespectful or negligent. Right. So, this is the law of the life, and it has applied till now, and it will keep on applying, as it is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. Just like it is explained that the old ox is not treated well by the farmer, similarly, the old people, or as we grow old in our life, we should also expect the similar treatment. Right? We are no different. And that is where the principle of amanina manadena comes in. So when we are treating old people, we should be careful that they should not feel neglected. While when we are becoming old, we should be careful not to expect any return, respect in the return. And this is the real principle of amanina manadena. Otherwise, we will land in a trouble. Srila Prabhupada further explains a difference between Krupana and Brahmana. So Krupana is one who has received huge wealth, but he never spends that money. Later in the 11th canto, we are going to come across a classic Krupana. Okay, the Brahmana of Avantipur, Avanti Brahmana, that we are going to discuss. So, similarly, human form of life is a wealth in itself. And if we do not utilize this wealth for God realization, we remain Krupana and thus become condemned by everyone. And therefore, we have to follow this principle of Amanina Manadena, that we have to give all respects to elderly people. Of course, they are irritable at times. It is not that, they are not, they are. But, a devotee is always conscious, just like I am tolerating somebody, that naturally means somebody also is tolerating me. And realizing this, a devotee is always conscious. Jnana vriddha, tapo vriddha, vayo vriddha. We have to give good respect. Right? Text 8. Atmanam kanyaya grastam panchalan aridushanat duranta chintapamapanno nalebhe tatra pratikriyam. Translation.
Translation: When King Puranjana saw that all his family members, relatives, followers, servants, secretaries, and everyone else had turned against him, he certainly became very anxious. But he could not counteract the situation because he was thoroughly overwhelmed by Kalakanya. Purport: When a person becomes weak from the attack of old age, the family members, servants, and secretaries do not care for him. He is then unable to counteract this. Thus, he becomes more and more anxious and laments his frightful condition. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So soon he saw that everybody around him is becoming indifferent. People have their life. People will go on with their life, right? And thus he was thoroughly overwhelmed by this neglect and became very, very anxious. And therefore, the time in the old age is best utilized in the service of the Supreme Lord, and that is not abruptly possible. And therefore, the youth is given, the life is given, so that we prepare for the old age by always being absorbed in the spiritual activities. Right. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, when a person becomes weak from the attack of old age, the family members, servants, and secretaries do not care for him. And this we have seen, right? In our own lives, we have seen. And he becomes more and more anxious and laments his frightful condition. Srila Prabhupada narrates just one story that he met a man who had huge wealth, and all his wealth he had just put it below the bed. On that bed there was a gaddi, and on that gaddi he was sleeping. And night time, time to time he used to wake up and check all the money and again go to sleep. So this is what the anxiety is. And therefore, Vriddhavastha is typically Chintasakta Vriddhavastha. Right? There is a very beautiful verse by Adi Shankara. He says that Balyavastha Kridasakta, Tarunavastha Taruni Rakta, Vriddhavastha Chintasakta, Pare Brahmani Kopi Nasakta. And therefore, we have to be responsible in old age, but we have to be detached in old age. It is very, very important. We don't have to have opinion on everything. We should absolutely give the opinion, not when asked for, when it is begged for. Right. So this is very important. Otherwise, we become very irritable, and people will just start neglecting. Anyway, people neglect. And but this should not make us, another trap is this should not make us inhuman or indifferent or, TTMM, tera tu mera mein kind of syndrome, right? One has to be very, very conscious. One has to be very personal. And therefore, the principle of amanina manadena is extremely important in old age. That although people may treat us neglectfully, but we don't have to return that treatment with vengeance. Okay, you behave like this, I will also behave like this. No, that is absolutely not the case, right? One has to remain very kind, gracious, understanding. Yeah, this people need their time, people need, and the neglect. Thank God, people are neglecting me. That means they are not bothering me. That means they are giving me more time with Krishna. Let me utilize that my time with Krishna. So one should never become vengeful. It is very important. Otherwise, the vengeful person has different species waiting in the next life. Text 9. कामाभिलाषणदीनो यातयामांश्च कन्यया विगतात्मगतिस्नेह पुत्रधारांश्च लालयन्. Translation.
The object of the enjoyment became stale by the influence of Kalakanya due to the continuance of his lusty desires. King Puranjana became very poor in everything. Thus, he did not understand the aim of life. He was still very affectionate towards his wife and children, and he worried about maintaining them. Purport. This is exactly the position of present civilization. Everyone is engaged in maintaining the body, home, and family. Consequently, everyone becomes confused at the end of life, not knowing what spiritual life and the goal of human life are. In a civilization of sense gratification, there cannot be spiritual life because a person thinks only of this life. Although the next life is a fact, no information is given about it.
Yes. The objects of the enjoyment became stale. Right. This we can see. That, when we have the old age, like my mother so many times still, whenever I ask, this Diwali new, I said, no, 10 saris are already lying in the cupboard. Don't get me anything new. Right. Objects of enjoyment become stale by the influence of Kalakanya. The continuation of the lusty desires, he became very poor in everything, did not understand the aim of life, and still remain kutumbi and worried about maintaining them. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains this is the exact position of the current civilization, which is engaged in just taking care of aham mameti. And thus everything become confused. People have no idea of the next life. People treat next life as a fantasy or mythology. And he said, who believes? You're all, come on, just become 21st century people want. But next life is the basis of spiritual life. Bhagavad Gita begins with discussion on the next life, that my dear Arjun, you are not this body, but you are the spirit soul. And the soul cannot be killed. So Punarjanma is not some fantasy. It is the basis of everything that we do. If there is no Punarjanma, then all we are doing is a time pass. Right? So people have no idea about Punarjanma. People just want to enjoy, exploit, the current life and current time. And typically people want to follow the Charvak philosophy that, Yavat jivet sukham jivet, ya bhasmi bhutasya dehasya. Who has seen the next life? Just enjoy. And therefore, there is a very unfortunate situation everywhere. Text 10. गन्धर्वयवनाक्रान्तां कालकन्योऽपि उपमर्दितां हातु प्रचक्रमे राजा तां पुरीम् अनिकामतः. Translation.
The city of King Puranjana was overcome by the Gandharva and Yavana soldiers. And although the king had no desire to leave the city, he was circumstantially forced to do so, for it was smashed by Kalakanya. Purpose. The living entity, separated from the association of the Supreme Personal of Godhead, tries to enjoy this material world. He is given a chance to enjoy it in a particular type of body, beginning with the body of Brahma down to the microbe, down to that of microbe. From the Vedic history of creation, we can understand that the first living creature was Lord Brahma, who created the 7 great sages and other Prajapatis to increase the universal population. Thus, every living entity, according to karma, his past desires and activities, gets a particular type of body from that of Brahma to that of a microbe or gem in stool. Due to long association with particular type of material body, and also due to the grace of Kalakanya and her Maya, one becomes overly attached to a material body, although it is abode of pain. Even if one tries to separate worm from stool, the worm will be unwilling to leave. It will return to the stool. Similarly, a hog generally lives in a very filthy state, eating stool. But if one tries to separate it from its condition and give it a nice place, the hog will be unwilling. In this way, if we study each and every living entity, we will find that he will defy orders of a more comfortable position. Although King Puranjana was attacked from all sides, he was unwilling to leave the city. In other words, the living entity, whatever is his condition, does not want to give up the body. But he will be forced to give it up, because after all, this material body cannot exist forever. The living entity wishes to enjoy the material world in different ways, and therefore, by nature's law, he is allowed to transmigrate from one body to another, exactly as a person transmigrates from the body of an infant to a child, to a boy, to a youth, to a man. This process is constantly going on. At the last stage, when the gross body becomes old and invalid, the living entity is reluctant to give it up, despite the fact that it is no longer usable. Although material existence and material body are not comfortable, why does the living entity not want to live? As soon as one gets a material body, he has to work hard to maintain it. He may engage in different fields of activity, but whatever the case, everyone has to work very hard to maintain the material body. Unfortunately, society has no information of the soul's transmigration. Because the living entity does not hope to enter the spiritual kingdom of eternal life, bliss, and knowledge, he wants to stick to his present body, even though it may be useless. Consequently, the greatest welfare activity in this material world is the furthering of the Krishna consciousness movement. This movement is giving human society information about the kingdom of God. God, there is Krishna, and everyone can return to God and live eternally in bliss and knowledge. A Krishna conscious person is not afraid of giving up the body because his position is always eternal. A Krishna conscious person engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord eternally. Therefore, as long as he lives within the body, he is happy to engage in the loving service of the Lord. And when he gives up the body, he is also permanently situated in the service of the Lord. The saintly devotees are always free and liberated, whereas the karmis who have no knowledge of spiritual life or transcendental loving service of the Lord are very much afraid of giving up the rotten material body.
Now, the city of Puranjan was overcome with the Gandharva and Yavana soldiers. He had no desire to leave the city, but he was forced as he was overwhelmed by Kalakanya. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains the living entity is separated from the association of the Supreme Lord due to trying to enjoy separate from the material world. Ichchadvesha samuttena dvandva mohena bharata. And he wants to enjoy the material world, and thus he is given a particular type of body to enjoy, and he constantly changes the body because he constantly changes the desires to enjoy. Within the same lifespan, he will change, from the Bala to Yavana and to Jara, like that he will change. And similarly, at the time of death, Tatha Dehantara Prapti, he will also change another body. And this is true for everybody in the universe, from Brahma to Indra Gopa. Yastvendra Gopa Mathavendra Ahosva Karma. Karmanurupa Phala Bhajana Matanoti. That, from amoeba, which is amoeba in the, Sanskrit is called as Indra Gopa. It's the smallest living entity. From Yastvendra Gopa Mathavendra Ahosva, from Indra Gopa to Indra to Brahma, everybody is just rotating due to the cycle of karma. And whenever somebody occupies that body, he becomes extremely attached to the body. So much so that when Prabhupada gives example of hog and dog, they are becoming attached to their own, the lifestyle and the conditioning. Even when they are offered the better position, they still are not interested. They are not interested to go to more comfortable position. They are interested in the status quo. People want to just maintain, the living entity just want to maintain. Why? Because there is no knowledge. Prabhupada says, because of not having the knowledge of the being the soul, one is not the body, but one is spirit soul. There is the eternal reality. Prabhupada says that the God exists. There is God. There is Krishna. There is kingdom of God. There is a life filled with eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Eternal life of knowledge and bliss. But people are unaware of this life, and therefore people just hold on to whatever they have. Even if they have some spiritual interest, they will come across the Mayavad theory, which says everything becomes one. You just merge, you just become light. And people say, better to fight in the material world than to become light and have no existence. Okay. So this is how people are cheated by the Advaitavad, and they just continue their interest in the material life. And thus, they are ready to transmigrate from one body to another, ready to take on the body. Asannapi klesha dasadeha. Although this body is asat, it gives extreme klesha to everyone. Just to have sometimes, back pain or shoulder dislocation or something like that, it is so extremely painful. It is asat, temporary, and it is extremely painful. But still, the body can be used as sadhan in obtaining the ultimate sadhya. So Prabhupada says a Vaishnava, a Krishna conscious person is not afraid of giving up the body because his position is always eternal. So death is not a concern for a devotee, right? That doesn't mean devotee drives recklessly, but that means that he's not unduly, anxious or afraid when he becomes old. He knows his destination. He has full faith in the Supreme Lord, and this is how he is confident of a better, superior life in the spiritual realm. Text 11. भवनाम्नोऽग्रजो भ्राता प्रज्वार प्रत्युपस्थितः ददाह तां पुरीं कृष्णां भ्रातुः प्रियचिकीर्षया. Translation.
Under the circumstances,
Yes,
Under the circumstances, the elder brother of Yavana Raja, known as Prajvara, set fire to the city to please his younger brother, whose other name is fear itself. Purport. According to Vedic system, a dead body is set on fire, but before death, there is another fire or fever, which is called Prajvara or Vishnu Jvara. Medical science verifies that when one's temperature is raised to 107 degree, a man immediately dies. This Prajvara or high fever at the last stage of life places the living entity in the midst of the blazing fire.
So when this attack was going on, the elder brother of Yavanaraj, Prajvara, he set fire to the entire city to please his younger brother, who is fear personified. And the Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada explains that the Vedic system is so scientific that either dahan or dafan, it is always dahan by the Vedic system because body is set on fire after the death, and before the death there is another fire within the body which is called as prajvara or vishnujvara. So the Prabhupada says even the medical science agrees that when the temperature of the body is raised to 107, right, a man immediately dies. And this prajvara, high fever at the last stage, is considered as the blazing fire. That is, Prajvara is setting the body of Puranjan to the fire, the city of Puranjana to fire. Text 12. तस्यां सन्धय्यमानायां सपौरः सपरिच्छदः कौटिम्बिकः कौटिम्बिन्याम् उपायत्याव्यसान्वयः. Translation.
Translation. When the city was set ablaze, all the citizens and servants of the king, as well as all family members, sons, grandsons, wives, and other relatives were within the fire. King Puranjana thus became very unhappy. Purport. There are many parts of the body, the senses, limbs, the skin, the muscles, blood, marrow, etc. And all these are considered here figuratively as sons, grandsons, citizens, and dependents. When the body is attacked by the Vishnu Jwara, the fiery condition becomes so acute that sometimes one remains in a coma. This means that the body is in such severe pain that one becomes unconscious and cannot feel the miseries taking place within the body. Indeed, the living entity becomes so helpless at that time of death that although unwilling, he is forced to give up the body and enter another. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that man may, by scientific advancement, improve the temporary living conditions, but that he cannot avoid the pangs of birth, old age, disease, and death. These are under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the agency of material nature. A foolish person cannot understand this simple fact. Now, people are very busy trying to find petroleum in the midst of ocean. They are very anxious to make provisions for the future petroleum supply, but they do not make any attempts to ameliorate the conditions of birth, old age, disease, and death. Thus, a person in ignorance, not knowing anything about his own future life, is certainly defeated in all his activities. Hare Krishna.
When Prajwara set the city on fire, all the citizens, servants, and family members within that came under the grip of the fire, and this King Puranjan became very, very unhappy. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that there are many servants which are explained. These are the senses, limbs, skin, and the saptadhatu of the body. And all these considered here as the sons, grandsons, and citizens and dependents. So when the body is attacked by Prajwara or Vishnujwara, the fiery condition was so acute that person may sometimes go in coma and does not understand, become unconscious, and not aware of the kind of pain which is there within the body. Therefore, Prabhupada writes here, and therefore, at the time of death, one is forced to give up the body and helplessly enter the another one. Karmana Daiva Netrena. Bhagavad Gita describes this, therefore, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. These are the real miseries of the life. We have seen what are the real miseries. The real miseries are Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. And all this is under the superintendence of Maya, Maya Dakshina Prakriti. Srila Prabhupada describes that people are interested in solving the petty problems of the world, and in search of the world petty problems, they are searching for petroleum here and there, but nobody is aware of the fuel that is stored in one's body that Prajwara will set fire to at the time of departure, at the time of death. People are not worried about the future life, and they are defeated in all their activities. So what is that defeat is? That defeat is means parabhavas tavad abodha jata. Bhagavatam, that verse comes. That, very nice verse it is. And number is also nice, 5.5.5. Okay. So that verse is parabhavas tavad abodha jata na jidnyasat yadatma tattvam. Even after attaining the human form of life, if one does not inquire about the higher truths, then that is considered to be parabhava. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, Santosh. So, Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes.
So Prajwara we just seen, but most of the time we see that when a person is dying, his body gets colder. So, is it an internal process or external process?
Doctors can answer this better, but the body gets colder when the soul leaves the body.
Okay.
So that is, but this is the general process. Now there may be many other, things. Somebody is in ICU or something like that. So then the body will get colder. That also explanation will come, that suddenly body becomes cold.
Okay, Prabhuji.
All right?
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Hare.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Hare
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhupada.